All right, folks, I am going to take the occasion of the remaining few moments of this show to talk about homelessness. It's something that you television viewers may not have heard me wax eloquently on as often and as frequently as radio listeners have heard. I have often been accused, wrongly so, of making fun of the homeless and of bashing the homeless. And instead, what I have done for the entire length of time that I've been on the air in my national radio show, which is approaching 5 years, is to rather criticize the homeless advocacy. See, I don't believe any of the myths that they say about homeless. I don't think that there are 3 million, and there never were. And I don't think that homelessness was caused because Ronald Reagan cut the housing budget. That didn't happen. I don't believe that homelessness occurs because you and I don't care. I don't care. I don't believe that there but for the grace of God go you and I is applicable. I don't think most of us are only one paycheck away from being homeless. Rather, what the homeless problem is an opportunity for several leftists to assume a stage of power using their compassion and their concern to point fingers of blame at capitalism and Reaganomics as being the culprits and the reason why some of these God-fearing people, who are just like you and I, they say, have somehow slipped through the cracks of the safety net. Now, that's not the case. The safety net has become a hammock for quite too many people in our country. And in the process of doing these homeless updates, many people have failed to listen to me in context, have failed to take seriously what I'm saying, and have chosen to just bash me as being unconscionable and a man without compassion. Let me illustrate perhaps the best example of what I'm talking about by telling you about this outfit in California called Project Dignity. Project Dignity is an organization which was offended not long ago when grocery store owners decided that it was time that they got their shopping carts back. See, the homeless go out and go into grocery stores and take shopping carts, and they become their homes. And they reel them around town, they put their earthly belongings in there, and that's it. Well, grocery store owners, those things cost $110 or more a piece. They want them back every now and then. After all, they paid for them. It's their property. And so the homeless advocates go, you cold-hearted grocery store guys, you insensitive boors, what right do you have to take their homes away? And so Project Dignity starts up. The avowed purpose is to raise money, to collect money from you, to buy shopping carts for human beings. And call it compassion, call it concern and caring. They put reinforced wheels on these shopping carts. Tell you why. Most homeless people, folks, have not figured out leverage. When they get their shopping cart and they go off the sidewalk and into the street, you eventually reach a curb. And many times you and I would just put our foot on the rear axle of the shopping cart and lift it up and go onto the sidewalk. The homeless just the wheels come off. So these shopping carts have reinforced wheels, and you can even get them so that they are rubberized on the tips so that the metal doesn't hurt anybody. Well, these people claim that that's compassion and caring. Would you think that going out and saying to another human being, hey, I love you, I care about you, and I want the best for you. Here's a shopping cart. Now you laugh. You laugh, but that's what I'm talking about. That doesn't help those people out of the situation they're in. It just promotes them staying in it. So I criticize it. Of course, I'm the bad guy. Well, let me show you the latest from Project Dignity. It's a video that's shown at shelters where the homeless go to learn how to survive. Project Dignity is teaching the homeless how and what to eat out of trash dumpsters. Watch this.
Here we are again facing this dumpster, and with me is Harry and Booyah and Tom, and they're going to show you some different pieces here. Harry, what's that you got there?
This is a pretty nice medium-sized pumpkin here.
Let's say it again, Harry. Harry,
nice pumpkin.
What do you have there, Harry?
It's a pumpkin.
It's a pumpkin?
This is edible, and this is one of the better ones here.
Can you show us another one? Booyah, grab one out of there, would you guys?
This is just some of the surplus these guys have.
Now this one here is bad, obviously.
Yeah.
You know,
broken.
It's broken up and whatnot. Show us another one, Tom. Here's a good one that Tom pulled out. You know, it could be wiped off, apparently, and that'll make edible eating. It's pretty good. And for something like this, you have to worry about germs too much because it can be washed off, you know, because you're eating the inside, not the outside.
You believe that? Folks, that's not humor. That's not Saturday Night Live. That's not even a current affair. I mean, that is an actual video put together by people in Garden Grove, California, to teach people how to survive as homeless, to eat out of dumpsters. That's not compassion, that's not concern, that's not caring. That's almost criminal. And that's the
All right, we are back. Hope you guys liked that, enjoyed that little musical interlude that I had going there. The next subject I'm going to talk about, I've been wanting to do this for a long time, but I've never gotten around to it. I just didn't, for the past year, I just didn't feel like making any videos on the subject. And that is a Skid Row update. Now, on my old channel, Grizzly907LA, I did a video back in 2012 called Skid Row, the inner city hellhole, what America's going to look like once the lights go out. And I'm going to give you an update now 7 years after the fact. As you all know, and according to, Borfu, I'm a piece of shit living off of welfare in Skid Row. Well, I'm no longer in Skid Row, but I'm still behind enemy lines. I lived in Skid Row from 2003 till 2018, so a total of 15 years. I lived in the same place for 13 years. So I originally did that video because I got sick of people talking about how these homeless were just downtrodden and no one gave a fuck about them, and that nobody cared or didn't give a damn or anything like that. And I want to set the record straight because that was not my experience living in that neck of the woods. So I told this truth about it. I gave my impression of what I see every day when I go out the door. And it got quite a few views, so this is an update to that video, and maybe a continuation of it. As you can see by the thing on the screen, this is an article from Town Hall Media, and it's titled "Bubonic Plague in Los Angeles is California on the Verge of Becoming a Third World State." And it was written by Matt Vespa for Town Hall Media, June 25th, 2019. I have some other articles related in the stack here. I'm not gonna. I might read the first two paragraphs of this and then go on from there. A lot has happened. We are still dealing with the border crisis. The Democratic debates are about to begin, and as of June 25th, 2019, they haven't occurred yet. But they were shit shows. Just as a side note. And Iran is rallying the war sabers. The city of Los Angeles should be thankful that there are so many distractions. The Democrat-run urban center, more like urban hellhole, has become a total disgrace, and that's very common among the left coast. Excuse me. Tucker Carlson had Victor David Hanson on last week, where the latter said that California is on the verge of becoming the nation's first third world state, from trash being illegally dumped to City Hall becoming a rat-infested den in the city of LA. It all points to the decay suffered when Democrats run things. True story. Even police stations in the city are loaded with rats. One was fined $5,000 over its conditions that left one officer stricken with typhoid fever. It is to the point where there is a possibility that bubonic plague, yes, the Black Death, may be present in the city. This isn't new. Typhus outbreaks were being reported in February via NBC Los Angeles. So with it was like this right before I left. The situation in downtown Los Angeles and Skid Row, and in other cities like San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, the home of the other white meat, have become almost completely untenable. You have trash in the streets, which is always the case of Skid Row. I mean, even back in 2005, they had trash in the streets, but it wasn't to this degree. And what happened was, it's a couple of things, really. It's a lot to do with the city government. It has a lot to do with the Ninth Circuit, or as we like to call it in Conservativeville, the Ninth Circus Court of Appeals, and the fact that California is a welfare state. And homelessness has just blown up even worse than it was back in 2005. Where I was living at in 2005, you had a couple homeless encampments, but it was nothing compared to what it was and what it is right now. Because back in 2005, the homeless encampments were confined to to 2 blocks, well, 3 blocks actually. 5th Street, 6th Street, not Wall Street, but I forgot the name of the street, but it's a well-known street for being dirty and having filth and garbage strewn about on it. But that was another street. But now it's all over the place. It's on every block. It's on both sides of the street. You can't walk on the sidewalk because tents are obstructing the walkway. So you have to walk on the street in the hopes that you don't get ran over by a car. Or if you go to the other side of the street, you got to risk getting attacked by vicious pit bulls. And I got 3 articles here. The next article is from USA Today saying, blaming shelters and street sleeping, Donald Trump blasts California for homeless crisis. When we know the slant of that article, yep, exactly. California is a welfare sanctuary state. And here's another article. I might do a separate video on this. California, homeless people could lose the right to sleep on sidewalks if Western cities have their way. So those are 3 articles that I just dug up just by doing a cursory search. Yeah, the fashion district is it was halfway decent, but it's become a hellhole now. And basically, part of the reason why Skid Row's become even more of a hellhole than it was back in 2005 is because a bunch of social justice warriors, safe suburban socialists, virtue signaling socialists, and other forces went to the Federal Court of Appeals and said that it was unconstitutional to ban sleeping on the sidewalks during the day because the rule used to be no daytime camping. That means you couldn't just set up your tent and set up shop. You had to get up and pack your shit up by like 6 o'clock in the morning. And the cops would come out there and they would start waking people up around 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning and told them, hey, you got to roll it up and get out of here. No, I don't know if it's Grizzlyism or not. It might be a candidate, but I'm not going to think about it right now. But yeah, USA Today is a liberal newspaper, and it should be USSR Today because it's ran by communists. Getting back to the whole situation in downtown LA, it's become untenable because a federal judge said it's unconstitutional to ban people from sleeping on the streets and camping on the streets during the daytime, and he gave the provision that the only way you can ban that is if you provide these people housing. And I gotta tell you, I've lived with some of these people in my building, and they are absolute scumfuck, dirtbag pieces of shit. They're dirty, they break stuff, their rooms are bug infested with cockroaches and bed bugs because they don't bathe, they don't wash their clothes, and they're still doing drugs. And as long as they're paying the rent, you know, the people that run these SROs don't give a shit. And for those of you who don't know, SRO stands for single room occupancy. Basically, you get a room with a toilet and a shower in some places. Some places you have a community shower, which I would not stay in because community showers, forget about the way these scumbags, how dirty these scumbags are. They probably got like fungus and bacteria and all sorts of nasty stuff on their feet. So when you walk into one of those community showers, you better be wearing shower shoes. But that was the proviso. So the judge said, unless you can provide shelter for all these people, you can't ban them from camping on the streets. So what happened was people, got word through CNN. I'm not talking about the Communist News Network. I'm talking about the Crackhead News Network, that LA was the place to be. California was the place to be because unlike some states, and this is another reason, unlike some states, California has no welfare to work requirement, meaning you can get on welfare and you can move to California. You don't have to go out and find a job. You don't have to do any volunteer work, and you don't have to seek any job training. You can just stay on welfare for infinity and just sit on your ass all day. And what's better for a crackhead than the free money to buy crack with? So what a lot of these crackheads do is, of course, they get in debt to the drug dealer. Same thing for meth heads, smack whores, speed freaks, etc. Is the drug dealer will confiscate their EBT card. And for those of you who don't know, EBT card stands for electronic balance transfer. And basically it's like ATM cards. The welfare department gives it out to the welfare recipients. So what the drug dealer does is he takes whatever money he thinks is appropriate, keeps it for himself, and then you get the rest. And usually if you're living in a SRO, you get subsidized rent, so you pay on a sliding scale. So what happens is the drug dealer, sorry about the squeaky chair, I can't do nothing about it right now, but the drug dealer just basically gives them enough money to pay rent, and that's it. And then they're on their own to hustle the rest. And a lot of these people living in SROs, They go to food banks. They scam homeless shelters for free food, and they know all the spots to go to too. I mean, they got it down to a science. They totally know how to get over on the system. So that's part of it. And a part of it is this court case, went all the way to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Ninth Circuit upheld the lower court's ruling. So what's going on now is cities have gotten so desperate that they're actually writing amicus briefs, which is, for English, friend of the court briefs, and they're petitioning the Supreme Court to take up the case and hear it because they're sick of people sleeping on their streets. They're sick of spending all the money, spending a bunch of money on street cleanup because these people, they shit on the streets, they piss on the streets, they defecate, they leave used needles behind, and the police department's hands are tied because they can't go in there and break up these camps and tell them to get the fuck out. I mean, these people should not be allowed to sleep on the sidewalk during the day. I'm sorry. If you're a suburban socialist, if you're a gated community liberal, you're a loft living Leninist, we're going to have problems. Because the people that are boohooing about, it's wrong for kicking people, making people break up their camp when the sun comes up because it violates their constitutional rights. But these are the same people who would freak out, would lose their shit if one of these homeless scumfucks rolled into their neighborhood. And if you want to see the police come out in 2 minutes, just be a homeless person come in one of these safe socialist suburbs and see what happens. The housewife or whatever, the self-entitled white woman will get on the phone and have them rolled out really fast. They're virtue signalers because they say one thing and they do another. And what liberals advocate for is usually what the opposite of what they actually believe in. This has been proven time immemorial, and I'm not going to get into it in this episode. But it's these people that are pushing this as well because they don't have to deal with the bullcrap that the homeless people bring to the area. And a lot of small businesses are pushing for this because everybody's boohooing about, these people's constitutional rights, but what about the constitutional rights of the people that run businesses in these areas? Yeah, and you know what? And that money could be used to either pay off debt or put to some other good use. And those people on poop control could find other jobs. And I don't think most people would want that job anyway. But getting back to it, these people that cry for the homeless and advocate for them and virtue signal for them, they don't give a shit about the people that have businesses in these areas. They don't give a shit about the small business owners who, have to open up and literally wash the shit, the piss, the spunk, the used needles off the street every morning and shoo off the people that are sleeping in front of their storefront. And of course, these homeless scumfucks are belligerent, they're combative, they're aggressive, on and on and on. But no one thinks about those people. No one thinks about the costs that are incurred by those people who already have to pay high rents. The price of houses is ridiculously high, and I'll get into that in a second. And have to just survive in an anti-business climate, only to have this homeless problem piled on top of them. But they're just trying to make a buck, employ people, and feed their families. No one thinks about their rights. No one gives a shit about them. These leftists, these lib traders don't give a damn. They could care less. And I don't even think it enters into their minds. And so with all the increased trash comes an increase in fleas. Well, actually, first it comes an increase in rats. And rats have fleas on them. And fleas carry those diseases like typhus, typhoid fever, the bubonic plague. And then also you got to factor in the illegal aliens who carry diseases such as antibiotic-resistant tuberculosis and other nasty diseases that we, 20 years ago, we didn't even hardly see in this country, but now they're coming back because, lib trader scum have let these cities and these areas, especially areas like Skid Row, completely run into the ground and become totally untenable. Exactly, and you're right, Steve Lucas. Steve Lucas says the same virtue signalers are pro-refugee and pro-excess immigration. Yeah, they're totally into sanctuary cities just as long as those illegal aliens don't come to their neighborhood unless they're there to mow the lawn or clean the house. That's the only thing they care about. But other than that, they just show up in their neighborhood. They're going to call the police and have them shoot out. And this was proven earlier this year when Donald Trump said he's going to send all the illegal aliens to sanctuary states like California. Exactly. So you have this outbreak of disease, garbage, rotting food. You don't know how many times I would walk down the street and see like a styrofoam box with food just laying out, and ants and cockroaches coming over it, swarming on it and eating it, and just a disgusting garbage that I would just see walking down the street. And they're fighting a losing battle, but they have crews that come out and they clean off certain blocks every month. And I guess they have a rotation. And when they power wash these blocks off, the water is literally black, jet black, because of all the dirt, grime, and slime on it. And they have bulldozers literally loading this garbage up into like huge garbage trucks of all these homeless people shit, because they collect a bunch of worthless, dirty, nasty crap, and they don't throw it out. They just They just leave it on the street. They don't give a shit. I mean, you don't know how many times I've come by and seen like a pile of dirty clothes just sitting there, and those things are perfect breeding grounds for rats and fleas. And it's a mess, and the city of LA's letting it go because the people in the LA City Council, or as I like to call it, the Shitty Council, and the LA County Board of Supervisors had let this shit go on and on and on, because they secretly, and I think a lot of them really, and some of them have expressed it, they side with these homeless scumfucks. And don't give me that shit about, well, these homeless people are mentally ill and down in their luck. True, there are some homeless people that are mentally ill. They have like schizophrenia, they are bipolar, they have serious mental issues, kind of like Portuguese mass shooter, that are out of their minds because they don't take their medication. And don't thank Reagan for that. Thank the ACLU for that, because back in the 60s, the ACLU went to the Supreme Court and said forcing people to stay in mental hospitals is violating their civil rights. So at the time, the court was extremely liberal, so they released these people on the streets. But of course, liberals always like to revise history, so they blamed it on Reagan. There are people that are down in their luck that are homeless. They should be helped. They're truly down in their luck. Those two categories do not make up the majority of homeless people. The majority of homeless people are drug addicts, they're alcoholics, they're ex-cons, usually child molesters, and just the lowest of low scumbag, piece of filth and scum. And they end up on the streets because, well, they don't end up on the streets, they choose to be on the streets because on the streets they don't have to follow any rules. They don't have to follow anybody else's guidelines. They don't have to follow social values or mores. They could do their own thing without anybody giving them too much trouble in LA. Yeah, and there are some men that have been divorce raped that are out in the streets that are homeless, and they get my sympathy, but like I said, most of them are drug addicts, alcoholics, ex-cons who can't find a job because they're such fuck-ups that nobody will hire them. Convicted pedophiles, etc., etc. They come to Skid Row. And they choose to be there, like I said, because they don't have to follow any rules. There are places that will help them, that will help them get on their feet, will help them clean up, get off of drugs, get them to the point where they can find some sort of like entry-level, minimum wage kind of no-load job to get them started back on their lives. But the problem is they don't want to go to those places because those places make them follow rules. Like, you can't sit in the day room all day, drinking soda, doing drugs, smoking cigarettes and watching daytime TV. You got to get off your dead ass and look for a job, or be in some sort of job training program. Or if you're in a drug rehab, you got to attend groups. Steve Lucas, there is some help for veterans, but the problem is you got a lot of veterans out there they don't want to do what's necessary to get off the street, and they just want to run their own program. Now, there are some exceptions to that, because there are some veterans that have severe PTSD that can't stand being inside of a building, and they get really freaked out. I knew one of those guys, and he wasn't a half bad guy. He's actually a pretty decent guy, but he just had such severe PTSD and mental illness that he can't stand being inside a building more than a couple of hours. But that, once again, doesn't represent the majority of homeless people. Sithonet Sis says, California is a bastion of conservatism in the 1950s before the boomers were born. Well, no, it's actually a bastion of conservatism in the 80s and early 90s. But what happened was, and Reagan was wrong for this, and I'm a big Ronald Reagan fan, Reagan was wrong for amnesty, and what happened was Reagan granted amnesty to the illegals. They all voted Democrat, and that's how California went from a fairly conservative state to a one-party state that it is today. and that's why liberals want to, legalize the current crop of illegal aliens in this country, because that's where they're going to get their votes from. They've already gotten done using black people, so now they've thrown them under the bus. So now their current demographic is illegal immigration. But getting back to this whole homeless thing, these people choose to be homeless. They know how to scam the system. They know where to go to get the free food, get free clothing, and do all other stuff. And they also sell drugs, because where I was living at, the homeless scumfucks across the street from me, they were drug dealers and they had vicious pit bulls. And I'm going to take a little bit of a trip down the tangent, Bill, for a second here. And I'm going to talk about some personal experiences I had, which were very disconcerting for me. They had vicious pit bulls that would lunge at people, that would attack people just riding their bike down the street or walking down their street. And a couple times, one of those scumbags had a pit bull on a leash. Was really a rope. But they would lunge at me, and I told the guy, you're lucky this is not in Texas, because if this were Texas, the dog would have gotten one in the head, and you would have gotten one in the head. And for the longest time, until I moved out of there, I carried a mini machete with me, slung under my right arm, so I could just pop the snap on the sheath, pull it out, and slash. And it was mainly for the pit bulls, the vicious pit bulls, and that really kind of put me in a bind, because I don't like hurting animals. You want to see me completely melt down? You want to see my kryptonite? It's animals. So I was in between a rock and a hard place. And I've seen them maul other dogs. I've seen them attack people. And the cops never come out there because they hide the pit bulls. And the cops are such dipshits that they won't go into tents. I guess they're worried about getting sued by some ACLU, the American Communist Lawyers Union, for violating these poor little babies' rights. It's ridiculous. So this entire situation has become completely untenable, and I'm going to tell you right now, part of the problem is the fact that they can't kick these people out. They can't run these people off. They can't say, hey, you can't camp here during the daytime. You got to roll it up. And that's because of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And I'm hoping, against hope, that the Supreme Court takes up this case and rules in favor of the cities, because that's going to be part of the solution. But part of the solution is allowing these people to sleep on the streets. There's no prohibition against them sleeping on the streets. I mean, Orange County's having this problem. Los Angeles is having a problem. San Francisco's having it. Portland, Oregon, Seattle, and other blue states where welfare is easily attainable and the climate's halfway mild. They're having these problems. And with these problems, with these homeless people, with these dirty scumfucks, they're bringing back diseases. I mean, because when I was down there was a couple of outbreaks of antibiotic-resistant tuberculosis. And so what I did was I literally created a shield in my room. I had traps for the bugs. I even had little sonic devices to drive the bugs away. I took fistful of vitamins, multivitamins, multi-mineral, and other supplements to protect myself from this stuff. And thank God I never caught antibiotic-resistant tuberculosis or typhus or typhoid fever and the Black Death. Now, I'm telling you something, if the bubonic plague does make a resurgence, it is going to spread like wildfire, because to give a little bit of a history lesson, and once again, I'm going to take a detour to Tangentville. In Europe, which had similar conditions to Skid Row, and these other cities had, the Black Death came through and wiped out half the population. The disease spread like wildfire through rats and fleas infested with the bubonic plague. And because Europe was under the thrall of the Catholic Church, they killed all the cats because they thought cats were like evil, because they thought witches had cats as their familiars. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to fly, Marty. Marty Hertz says, pro tip, remove all the tents via eminent domain. That could be tried, but I think they want to give the Supreme Court, they want to see if the Supreme Court's going to hear this case. Now, another little known factoid is that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals gets overturned by the Supreme Court on a regular basis. Their decision, because it's like the wacky liberal court out of all the circuit courts in the country, it gets overturned the most. But yeah, these conditions are ripe for the bubonic plague. Now, there's an especially big trash spot on Sirius Avenue, and I know where that's at, because I lived around the area. there's a big trash spot where people were illegally dumping trash. It used to be a building, but what happened was one homeless scumfuck got pissed off at another homeless scumfuck and set their tents on fire, and their tents were next to the building, so the building burnt down. Now it's an empty lot, and people dump their trash there, their food, their garbage, and it's become a disease-ridden hellhole. I mean, we're talking like post-apocalyptic level bullshit here. And a lot of businesses in this area, they packed up shop and they're trying to sell their buildings, but they're having a hard time doing it because who wants to fucking open a business in an area that's overly populated by scumfucks with a tent outside your door? Yeah, well, Buster Guno says, ironically, didn't cats help rid them of the plague by eating the rats and dying from them? Yeah, but see, the religious ruling class at the time deemed cats to be evil, so they killed all the cats. Now, here's another little factoid. The Jews in Europe, they did get sick from the bubonic plague, but they didn't get it as bad as nearly as the European population, because what the Jews did was they followed the Old Testament laws, and they kept their streets and their buildings clean. They cleaned themselves, they kept their clothes clean, and therefore they minimized the risk of bubonic plague. Another little factoid, the bubonic plague was ravishing London, and what happened was a fire started and basically burnt down the city, but it also killed all the fleas and the rats, and in essence it eliminated the bubonic plague from London, but they had to burn the city down, which, you know, I'm not calling for it, I'm not advocating for it. Okay, I'm not, I don't believe in it, but I wouldn't, nor would I shed a tear if all of a sudden LA burnt to the ground. Now, I'm not saying anybody should go do that. Don't. That's bad. But if it were to happen, I wouldn't knock the good news. Sifonet said France lost 5 million people in 20 years during the 1500s due to the bubonic plague. It led to inquisition against the Jewish people, blaming them for the plague. Exactly right, because and you know what, the Catholic Church, the Pope was even saying, "Hey, look, the Jews are getting sick like we are." He even kind of sort of stuck up for the Jews, but there's a group of people called the penitents. And I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but now you got me in history mode. Called the penitents, and they go through these towns whipping themselves, and they would run out the Catholic priests, they would take over, and they were the ones that largely ginned up the persecution of the Jews. And many of those Jews fled from countries like Germany or the Germanic states into places like Poland. But then history repeated itself when the Nazis invaded Poland in 1939, and then they rounded up all the Jews and sent them to the concentration camps. But getting back to this, even Dr. God, what's his fucking name? Dr. Drew Pinsky, and I think you guys ever lived in California and listened to K-Rock and Loveline. Him and Adam Carolla used to host Loveline, but Dr. Drew Pinsky was even warning about the bubonic plague coming to Los Angeles and coming back because of the rampant conditions. Because the city of Los Angeles does not have a rat patrol. Most of your major metropolitan areas have a rat patrol program that make a concerted effort to trap and exterminate rats to keep the diseases down. But LA doesn't have one. And that's another reason why the rat population is out of control. There was this one video, and you can look it up. A guy was at a restaurant eating dinner, and a dead rat fell from the ceiling right on his menu. Yep, Marty Hurt says, fun fact, those who use silver-eating utensils were spared due to the colloidal silver antibacterial properties. That's absolutely correct. But getting back to this whole thing, I'm going to kind of move into the solution, because I told you all this is probably going to be a short stream today. Part of the solution is repealing this ridiculous precedent set by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and tell these people, hey, you know what? You could camp, but you can't camp here. Part of the problem is run these people off, tell them to roll their shit up, let them camp overnight. But at 5 o'clock in the morning, they got to start packing it in and get out. That's also not allowing them to get away with the crap that they get away with. That's to clamp down on them. You got to be hard on the homeless. You got to kick these fucking scum in the ass. You got to make the situation so unbearable for them. Either one, they're going to leave, or two, they're going to get their shit together. You got, offer them help if they're drug addicts, offer them rehabilitation, help them get back on their feet so they can find a job and they can move into some sort of housing. It's that simple. Kick them in the ass. Now, once again, like I said, there's a lot of tangents in this one, and I'm sorry, but there's this YouTuber, and I forgot his name. I don't know if the title of his channel, Homeless Lives Matter, or if it's it's Invisible People. I think it's one of those people. I think it's Invisible People. And this guy's this cucky, fat, gay guy that goes around and bribes homeless people so he could tell them their sob story on camera. And of course, you know they're lying. Rat poison is made of arsenic and provokes heart attacks and rats, but is considered too dangerous by the progressiveness. Yep, because of the environment. Yep, and actually, in California, they pass laws limiting certain types of insecticide and rat poison because it's harmful to my environment. That's another problem, but I think that's a small part of the problem, though. But this guy, this cuck, he interviews these homeless people and he boo-hoos for them. And he's this like soft, fat, neckbeard, gay socialist jackass. And if he watches this video, fuck your feelings. Getting back to it, part of it's no overnight camping. You're not allowed to have like 10 tons of shit with you. You're only allowed to carry a certain amount, certain amount of things with you. Like say one large plastic trash can full, and that's it. Nothing else. You're not allowed to set up shop. I mean, goddamn, these people even set up businesses out of their tents. I mean, the guys across the street until they finally got sick of it. This guy had a literal shop with tools and stuff, and he would fix other homeless people's bikes and other crap like that. And he built these little what I call crackhead wheelchairs with little roofs on them and things to keep the sun off of them and all this other crap. So they're just getting away with murder, literally. I mean, it's a shit show. Part of it's sleeping on the streets. Part of it's also the high cost of housing in California. You have to understand something about Southern California and Northern California. They're in earthquake zones. They're on the San Andreas Fault. LA sits on a bunch of earthquake faults as it is. And so housing is going to be a little more expensive compared to the rest of the country because you got to build and factor in for earthquakes. So that's a given, but the current cost of housing has gotten so high and so out of control because corrupt politicians, all Democrat, of course, take money from these big developers and they rig the system so that the big developers are the only ones that can afford to pay the outrageous fees for regulations, the outrageous licensing fees, all this outrageous, ridiculous building code stuff, which jacks up the cost of housing. The housing market in California is a shit show. I mean, basically, you could pay $350,000 to get an outhouse in California. Well, it is, but it's not because it's not a natural consequence. Excuse me. Take Hawaii, for instance. Hawaii is naturally expensive because it's an island, and they have to get most of their supplies and food shipped in. Okay, that's a natural consequence. They can't help that situation, but California is totally an artificial consequence because of onerous regulations, high taxes, high fees to get a building license, and all these ridiculous requirements that people have to make just to build a house or renovate a house. So that and the fact that they have, I think, like 10 million illegal aliens living in California right now also contributes to it because let's do a little less than basic capitalism. Supply and demand. When you have a low supply and a high demand, the people supplying the stuff can charge whatever they want. They can charge outrageous prices for it. Now, when you have a high supply and a low demand, they have to cut their prices back, and they have to actually compete, but it's so hard to build new property in California that the people selling these places can afford to sell them for like millions of dollars because there's such a low supply due to the artificial climate that's been created by the lib trader scum, the socialist filth that run that state. Or as I like to call it, Commifornia. That's the problem. That's the main problem right there. And the fact that you have 10 million uninvited guests living in a blue sanctuary state also contributes to it. And the fact that money and resources are being spent on them because, I gotta tell you, illegal aliens in California have better teeth than veterans in California do because they get Medicaid and they can use that to go to the dentist to get their teeth fixed, whereas veterans can't. They also get subsidized housing. So, let's just say some guy is in fact down on his luck, is trying to get his life together. He has a hard time trying to get a house. He has a hard time getting into a stable living situation because he can't afford the housing. But illegal aliens, they get a HUD voucher. Go figure. This whole homeless crisis in California, Oregon, and Washington State, and in cities like LA, San Francisco, Seattle, and in Portland, this is all self-inflicted by the leftists that run those states. California is a one-party state now. I think there's one Republican in the state assembly in California, and every other politician in the state senate and assembly is Democrat. Every major California city is ran by a Democrat. This is all due to socialist policies, all due to Democrat control, to say suburban socialists, block-loving Leninists, Porsche Pinkos, Mercedes Marxists, and BMW Bolsheviks. This is all self-inflicted, and sad to say, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And you're going to have to see a Black Plague outbreak in Los Angeles. And I'll tell you, if there's an outbreak, it's going to spread like wildfire, and nothing's going to get done about it until the people in Beverly Hills, in Bel Air, Santa Monica, West LA, and other hoity-toity rich parts of town start getting the Black Death and their kids start dying. I can't say it any other way. I mean, there's no other way to put it. That's how it is. Because what you have in California, I find it ironic, is you have two classes of people in California. You have the extremely rich, the Hollywood lefties, the tech billionaires, and then you have everybody else, the poor. And liberals always like to say and complain and make this accusation against conservatives that conservatives want a two-class system of the rich and the poor and no middle class. And of course, lib traders come say they stick up for the middle class. They don't, because you know them by their deeds. Look at California. You have the very rich and you have the poor. And that's it. You don't have a middle class, or if you have a middle class, it's virtually non-existent in California anymore, because of their onerous policies and the fact that middle class people, the ones that can afford to move, we're coming up with some good ones. Obizen33 says, don't forget the Rolls-Royce redistributionalists. Well, I have one called Royal Residing Redistributionalists. But yeah, you have the rich and the poor class, and you have the rich who are living in their figurative and sometimes literal ivory towers along the coast, in the hills. And I love it. And just a little side note, and I think I'm going to probably wrap the stream up. Just a little side note. When you have massive, because sometimes when we get rain, it's massive rain, like we have El Nino in California. What happens is homes slide off the hills in the hill areas because the rain soaks the ground and the soil gives way. And this, of course, is after the forest fires come through and take out all the topsoil. And these rich people's homes slide down the cliff, and it makes me laugh every time it happens. I know that's cruel, but you know what? They kind of deserve it. Or when the water rises and the waves crash into their beachfront homes and ruin them. That makes me so happy, because it's like, you kind of deserve it for being such assholes. But then you have the poor people that live in places like Skid Row, South Central Los Angeles, East LA, the crappier parts of West LA, in other areas. So that's what's caused this massive homeless problem. And the best way to do it and to provide more housing in general for everybody is cut taxes / onerous regulation. Now look, nobody wants dirty water and smog-filled air, okay? I'm not saying cut, but the stupid, petty regulations that these liberal politicians put on everybody, because liberals are control freaks, is the thing that is solely the reason why housing is so expensive in California. And the fact that the developers, the major land developers, the billionaires and multimillionaires, they're the ones that pay these politicians money, mostly Democrat, and so they can have it all for themselves. And they could charge a high fee for their housing. But yeah, it's a shit show, and Trump was absolutely right. And like I said, I might do videos on these 3 separate videos in these articles where USA Today or USSR Today says, blaming shelters and street sleeping, Donald Trump blasts California for homeless crisis. Well, and Donald Trump's absolutely right. This is on the politicians of California. This is on the Democrats. Meanwhile, instead of trying to solve these problems, the housing problem, trying to lower taxes and encourage businesses to stay in California, they're doing the complete opposite. They're doing everything they can to drive business out of California. For example, they passed a law in the state legislature. Saying that 50% of any board of a business in California has to have at least 50% women because of my equality. On top of that, they're doing shit like banning plastic straws. They're passing resolutions condemning Donald Trump, but they're not attacking this homeless crisis. They're making laws like if you knowingly give someone AIDS, it's only a misdemeanor. They're doing everything they can to drive people out of their state. And what's going to be filled with that? What's going to fill the vacuum? Illegal aliens. Or illiterate illegal aliens. Basically, in the echo what Trump said, Mexico's trash. They're not sending their best and brightest. They're sending the garbage here, and these liberals are welcoming them with open arms because they want to be able to stay in office. So they're not doing nothing about the homeless problem. They're not doing nothing about the shit on the streets. The rampant spread of diseases. They're passing meaningless resolutions, symbolism over substance. They're enabling this problem to continue because it hasn't affected them yet. And I will say this once again, and then I think I'm going to end this stream on that note. Like I said, it's going to be a short stream today. Once again, it's symbolism over substance. Instead of worrying about impeaching Trump and fake Russian bullshit, they should be focused on this stuff and our infrastructure. With that being said, I'm going to conclude the stream. Yeah, in California, if you only give someone AIDS, you get a misdemeanor as opposed to a felony. They passed that law because of the LBGTQRSUVWXYZ lobby. Okay, on that note, I'm going to end this stream. Thank you for coming, everyone. Thank you for putting up with me and watching this stream. This is Grizzly Rise, and I am from behind enemy lines. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.